Novak's Bible. Let's talk about the 2008 presidential race. The Republicans, here's the latest national polls. Now, Rudy Giuliani still in lead at 32, down a few points from June. Fred Thompson still unannounced, but up 9 points since June. John McCain down 4 points, Mitt Romney down 5. Mr. Romney, however, continues to lead in Iowa and New Hampshire. Probably the big political story this week in Washington and in the campaign was John McCain. Campaign shakeup. Some of his closest advisors are now gone. John Weaver, his chief strategist, who Senator McCain described to me as his brother, no longer with the campaign. Charlie Cook of the National Journal wrote it this way: for all intents and purposes, McCain's campaign is over. The physicians have pulled up the sheet. The executors of the state are taking over. Paying bills, winding down, not strategizing, organizing, and getting a message out will be the order of the day. Mike Murphy, you worked for John McCain in 2000. Is the campaign done?
I don't believe so. I think it's back to the future after a very, very painful week. John Weaver's a good guy, and it's always hard to make these kind of changes in a campaign. But they had a very tough decision to make in the McCain campaign about 14 months ago. Do they run the insurgency campaign that was a lot of fun last time and almost won but lost? Or do they try the big invincible frontrunner campaign of all the expense and overhead and pressure that has, which doesn't really fit McCain right, but it's the campaign that normally wins the nomination. So now, in hindsight, it's easy to criticize that decision, but at the time, they want to win. So they tried it. McCain's a bad fundraiser. It's not his style. He shows a lot of political courage on immigration and the war, but the politics of that have been very tough for him. So now, I think McCain's going to get the campaign that he's most comfortable with, which is a low-budget campaign where it's going to be McCain showing a lot of courage out there. We'll see if he can turn in the vote. So they're in big money trouble. It's very bad. But with an ultra-low overhead, and John McCain, who's already famous, which is an advantage, out there in the fight, I think in the next 6 or 7 weeks, he can start to get a message that catches on a little bit. America lives a comeback story. I think he's back in the race, but it's much more of a long shot now than it used to be.
Bob Novak, you've been covering presidential politics a long time. Is it doable?
Remotely. They never come back. A lot of these early front runners, I've seen a lot of them, George Romney, Ed Muskie, they're way on top and they collapse. They never come back. There's always a first time. I do believe that without getting rid of Mr. Weaver, there would have been no chance. I think whatever slim chance he has is, as Mike says, it's a different campaign. I think if Weaver was his brother, he was his evil brother because he alienated so many people. But it's going to be John McCain's campaign now. But I think he's a very long shot.
Al Hunt?
I agree with Bob, except on John Weaver. I think the twin problems of immigration and Iraq, the time, I think John McCain is an authentic hero. I think it's kind of sad to watch this. Tim, I think there's probably a 40% chance he gets out of this thing in the fall when the Iraq debate comes up and says, this is going to be my mission now.
Bob Schrum.
I think the problems go deeper. I think he was so traumatized by Bush winning in 2000 that he decided to run as Bush in 2008. The Maverick became an expensive machine. And right now he's the face. He's a surrogate for Bush. He's the face of the surge. He stood up on immigration, and he should get credit for that because he stood up on principle, but he's not going to get delegates. So I think he's got a really fundamental problem, and Mike's right. He can go out there and he can be himself, but what's he going to say when he is himself?
Well, the question that's interesting to me is, I used to think, I'm becoming more cynical, that political courage was something people wanted in a president. And John McCain, to his political detriment, it now seems, has gone out and told people what they don't want to hear, which nobody else running for president of either party has dared to do. And so far, it hasn't worked for him at all. But that's who he is. It's all he's got. And I think the voters, we're still in the preseason, believe it or not. I don't really believe national polls till people start voting. This is a very front-loaded contest. You score in those 2 early states, Iowa and New Hampshire, you can bounce all the way. McCain, I think, is going to have the resources to go try to run that character on the truth teller campaign in those 2 states, and it's his best bet. It's elegant for him. He'll give his best performance at it. It's his only shot.
But if it's a referendum on the war,
but not the Republican primary,
but he's got to get some of those moderate Republicans. He's got to get some of those independents, especially to score in New Hampshire. He's hurt there, and for all of his kissing of the base, they don't like him.
Well, it's a perfect storm for Senator McCain because although he's on this, the party issue he's on, the war is very unpopular. He's unpopular inside the party on immigration. There's so many issues, Tim, that he's alienated Republicans on stem cell research, global warming, campaign finance reform. It's a very tough situation.
Majority of the Republicans in Iowa are against the war, which is really striking.
Yeah. But that's a caucus. That's hard for him. And in New Hampshire, Mike, I tell you why I think it's so hard for him to do it. Last time he won because of the independents. I mean, that's what. This time they're going to vote in the Democratic primary, not the Republican primary. That makes it almost impossible.
I think they may split if McCain does his job.
It was 70-30 last time. This time.
The one truth of politics is everything is changing, and this is still the beginning of the beginning in the voter world. 80% of people make their decision the last 3 or 4 weeks in January, or maybe late December. We got a ways to go. I'm not saying he's got a lock anymore, but he's now running a real McCain campaign, which I don't think rules.